September 12, 1998. The Mars Global Surveyor is 2 years into its mission to monitor Mars. It's above Phobos when its camera captures a surprising sight that amateur astronomer Efren Palermo then discovers on NASA's website.
I was looking through the images and kind of finding anomalies. That's when I saw something a little bit out of place.
Efren is looking at an enormous protrusion on the Mars moon's surface. You can tell from the shadow this thing is tall.
Phobos is a very small moon, and there's no geologic reason to have a structure sticking out like that.
This feature rises 300 feet into the sky, making it almost as tall as London's Big Ben. Author and lecturer Jason Martell says it seems to be cylindrical, with a slanted top, so many believe it can't be natural.
Many areologists have studied the idea that this could be some type of a monolith.
But this structure is as big as a building, so as strange as it seems, some people have speculated that it could be some type of futuristic dwelling. In fact, it looks a bit like Marcia, a 3D printed vertical home designed right here on Earth as a model for sustainable living on the red planet. Marcia's dual shell egg shape allows for the use of less material and balances the need for greater Earth-like atmospheric pressure inside, with Mars's thinner atmosphere outside.
The structure of these towers is taller and leaner in mass, making them ideal for climate conditions on Mars. Perhaps these structures are indicative of the intelligent design needed to create weather-resistant Martian structures.
Don't buy it? Well, there's an even more out there theory. This structure looks a bit like the plastic protected antennas on an old Nokia cell phone. So maybe it's an antenna or some other communication device attached to a larger spacecraft. That spacecraft being Phobos itself.
Soviet scientist Iosif Shklovsky concluded that Phobos was most likely hollow inside, with possibly a thin sheet of metal exterior. Originally thought to be an asteroid captured by Mars gravity, scientists thought that the drag from the atmosphere was causing Phobos to sink its orbit by almost 2 inches a year. And for that to happen, some said it had to be hollow, like a man-made artificial satellite.
Astronaut Buzz Aldrin thought the Phobos monolith would generate public curiosity when its existence became widely known. And he was right. We've got to ask, who or what put that there? Fortunately, we have some experts on hand to give us the lowdown on this Martian moon mystery. First, astrophotographer Andrew McCarthy speaks to whether the Phobos monolith could be an alien communication tower.
The irregular shape of this structure would make it difficult for communications as we understand it. The communications dishes we're familiar with would be symmetrical, with an antenna for omnidirectional transmitting and receiving.
McCarthy also suggests that Soviet scientist Iosif Shklovsky's idea that Phobos could be a hollowed-out spacecraft is, well, hollow, thanks to new info about Phobos and its twin moon, Deimos.
It's not that Shklovsky did bad science. It's that they had bad data to work with. Today, we're fairly certain they're completely solid and similar to many other asteroids out there.
And as far as this being a dwelling modeled on designs like Marcia,
it's just really coincidental that they have a similar shape to what the design is right now for Marcia, but it's definitely made up of rock material that's local to the region. You can see that it is a rock formation.
So then, what exactly is this Phobos monolith, and how did it get here?
Most likely, it's impact ejecta. It could have formed from an impact onto the surface of Phobos, but it also could be a meteorite that was heading towards the sun and intersected with Phobos, and what you're seeing is a piece of just laying there.
Our verdict, we're going to stick with our experts. This is most likely impact ejecta created from a meteorite collision. Phobos is getting closer to Mars by 6 feet every century. If this continues, it could crash into the red planet itself in about 50 million years. It's February 2021 on Mars. NASA's Perseverance rover successfully lands to begin its mission on the surface of our neighboring planet. But a few of the photos from this mission and earlier ones have left some people scratching their heads. On the surface, they appear to show stones scattered on the lifeless red planet. But if you look a little bit closer, some say these objects may not be stones at all. One of the images contains what looks like a walrus femur bone. Another seems to have the remains of a whale vertebrae. And if you zoom in very close, on the third one, there's what appears to be a live rodent. So, some people are calling this a lemming. Okay, let's get a better look. Here's what they say are its eyes, its nose, and its short, stubby legs. Writer and producer Billy Carson says these aren't the first odd things he's seen while studying Mars.
About 8 years ago, I started getting real deep into searching for space anomalies, predominantly on Mars because Mars has the most. And a lot of those images have things that appear to be out of place. They don't belong with the surrounding terrain.
Billy says some believe that's because these images are not even really from Mars. They're from a remote spot in northern Canada called Devon Island.
Devon Island became a research facility to test out rovers in 1996, roughly. The reason why they chose Devon Island is because of its Mars-like conditions, the cold temperature of the rocks, the terrain, and everything else.
Author Jason Martell says, according to the theory proposed by so-called Mars truthers, after the rovers were tested on Devon Island, they never made it to Mars because NASA didn't have the technological prowess.
Mars truthers have said that if you go onto NASA's website, a lot of the photos might be fakes, and that the actual stored location of these rovers are now deep within a hangar at NASA and not on the surface of Mars.
So are these actually photos of real animals and animal remains here on Earth?
We can see that the first one does have a strong resemblance to a lemming, a walrus femur bone. Even the third photo that shows questionably some type of a whale vertebrae, those are all native to Devon Island.
Since the mid-1970s, NASA has launched 10 missions with landers or rovers to the surface of Mars, with most categorized as successful or operational. Could they really all have been just a series of elaborate hoaxes? Let's let our experts bring this one back down to Earth. Astrophotographer Andrew McCarthy says there's solid evidence. We first started sending probes to Mars decades ago.
Viking will begin a new search.
Now, if we wanted to prove that NASA's actually been to Mars, we could look at one of our rivals. China actually has an orbiter named Tianwen-1 that's actually photographed the rovers on the Martian surface.
And McCarthy adds that you don't even need to be a scientist in order to track the Mars rovers.
Any amateur with a radio telescope can actually detect the signals from these probes that are in Martian orbit. While the amateur astronomers may not be able to decipher exactly what they're picking up, the Deep Space Network collects the signal from the probes, which is then interpreted by NASA and publicly available to all.
But if these images are actually from the rovers, how is it that they appear to show evidence of life on Mars? NASA geologist Dr. Bob Anderson checks out the photo that's said to be of a whale vertebrae.
The wind, although very weak on Mars, has a tendency to carve up these very soft rocks, making these beautiful sculptures that we find. Like in national parks, where you have arches. What you're seeing is the predominant wind coming from the left to the right that's carving into these grooves, which making it look like it's a vertebrae.
Video analyst Mick West believes there's a similar misidentification going on with the so-called walrus bone.
Femurs do not have shapes that kind of stick out in that way. I think all that we're looking at here is just some rocks that are partially buried. If you look through thousands of photographs of rocks, you're going to find some that resemble other things.
But what about this apparent live lemming? West now takes a closer look.
If you take this image and you kind of adjust the contrast, it looks exactly the same as a lot of the other rocks. The only thing that really makes this look kind of rodent-y is that there's a couple of pixels that are kind of dark. So if we remove these pixels by placing it with something else in the scene, then it immediately becomes a lot less like a rodent. This is a natural human thing. If we see anything that looks vaguely face-like, we start interpreting that as being an actual face.
As any regular viewer of this program will know, this phenomenon is known as pareidolia. And that's our verdict. This is a case of pareidolia. Though the images sure do resemble remains from Devon Island's fauna, we can confirm that NASA's Mars images are indeed coming from Mars, at least until the Mars truthers send us some more convincing evidence. Moscow, Russia, May 2019. A photographer sets up to shoot a full moon over the city. He's struggling to get focus when this leaves him more than a little moonstruck.
Это что за херня? Это что за херня? Это что за нахер такой? Это...
First, 3 black circles cross in front of the moon. And almost as soon as they pass, even more come into frame.
Бляха-муха, армия, ёптать, армия инопланетян.
We stabilize the frame and zoom in. There's no question, a cluster of objects is flying in a loose formation. Could these circular objects be asteroids or a fleet of alien craft? If they are, astrophotographer Andrew McCarthy calculates their size based on the moon's diameter and an estimated orbit 60 miles above the surface.
If these objects were orbiting the moon, they would have to be 2 to 3 miles wide.
If they are UFOs, they would be almost 40 times the size of the largest craft in Earth's orbit, the International Space Station.
So who or what is capable of building so many superstructures and putting them into lunar orbit?
So, are we looking at something huge orbiting the moon, like a fleet of UFOs or a cluster of asteroids? Or are we taking the wrong perspective? Is it something smaller and closer to Earth? We ask our experts to shed light on the mystery. First, astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio analyzes the video and confirms it's real, not photographic trickery.
I know this camera very well. You can zoom in very close to the moon. As you can see, this is an actual image from his camera.
So, could they be oversized satellites we Earthlings put into lunar orbit?
There are a lot of spacecrafts orbiting the moon, but they're not in the same orbits and they're not in the same areas.
Another important fact, hundreds of astronomers observe the moon every night. So you'd think anything odd popping up in its orbit would have set off alarms around the world, right? Still, NASA's Bob Anderson thinks they might be satellites, just not in the moon's orbit, but in ours.
At first, I thought it might be satellites circling the Earth, or a group of satellites that are orbiting the Earth.
That would make sense, because it's getting crowded up there, with actual clusters of satellites like SpaceX's Starlink network. The company has launched over 1,700 so far, with the option to add another 10,000. This seems to be case closed, except in studying the video more closely, Anderson and D'Antonio both see something that doesn't match up with satellites.
Right here, these objects are coming close to each other and then getting far away. So that negates the possibility that these are satellites. Maybe we're actually looking at birds. They fly around willy-nilly, okay, haphazardly through the sky.
The birds and their flapping wings form silhouettes that appear on the camera sensor as round objects.
It's very likely that we're looking at migratory birds of some kind.
Satellites don't speed up and slow down, and the video was shot and made during migration. So we're going to call this one Migrating Birds. Still, the space around the moon could be getting crowded soon. NASA's Artemis program aims to return humans there by 2024, and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk plan to build lunar bases. For decades, we've been sending probes to Mars, and ever since, strange images have been captured on the surface of the red planet. Could this be a floating spoon? Or this, a statue? What about this? The face of a god? But then, in the spring of 2020, things got really strange when an amateur astronomer claimed the cameras on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter photographed this. Take a closer look. It appears to be a group of buildings and pyramids on Mars, one even in the shape of an eagle's head. George Haas is the director of the Esoteric Cydonia Institute. He believes this could be evidence of an ancient civilization on Mars.
The first structure to get my attention is this four-sided pyramid that has a conjoined mound at the top. These are large geoglyphic formations that show intelligent design. All kinds of formations that appears to be a city.
George also believes these Martian pyramids are eerily similar to the ancient Mayan pyramids in Mexico.
It looks a lot like the Pyramid of the Moon in Teotihuacan. You have a four-sided pyramid with this platform or porch that's jutted off the one end of the pyramid. And they're almost identical.
Forensic investigator Chase Klotsky says there's a case to be made for past life on Mars.
There is physical evidence, scientific evidence, that there was once water on Mars. So if the water was there, it easily could have supported civilization.
So where did the Martians go? One popular theory, they were destroyed by nuclear war. The possible evidence? Atmospheric traces of an element called xenon-129.
Xenon-129 is a signature of artificial nuclear explosions.
A 1-megaton bomb can completely level a radius of nearly 4 miles. But before we mourn the annihilation of Martian civilization, let's determine if there was a civilization at all. We took these photos to the best in the field, Mars mission planner Jonathan Hill. Hill begins by examining the large Eagle's Head structure. Could that be by design?
We see cliff faces along the edge, nice gentle slopes that are consistent with ice deposits that we see on similar mesas throughout the planet.
Hill says those lines indicate a natural formation, and geological analysis of the area confirms it.
So using ground-penetrating radar from orbit, we can see down into different layers of these mesas to see what they're made out of. And the entire mesa is rock and water ice, and so that obviously rules out any artificial metals or other materials.
But what about the nearby pyramid? George Haas claims it's a mirror image of the Pyramid of the Moon in Mexico. Were the two built by the same hands?
When you look at it, the difference between an actual pyramid is that all the angles are perfect. They were artificially engineered. When you look at a mesa like this, the edges aren't straight, they're all curves. The top is not centered. The geometry is just not there.
And that evidence of nuclear war on Mars? The Xenon-129?
Xenon is a naturally occurring gas. We find traces of it in our atmosphere here on Earth, so it's not surprising that we find traces of it on Mars.
After years of studying the Red Planet and claims of amazing structures there, Hill believes there's a psychological explanation for what people think they are seeing on Mars, the phenomenon known as pareidolia.
It's basically where the human brain goes a little too far, and it implants patterns where patterns don't exist. And so I think people have to really prove to themselves that they're not being affected by this known effect.
So it's simply a trick of the eye. And turns out that sometimes we'll see things we want to see and not what's actually there. So our verdict? Pareidolia. But don't let that stop you from looking up at the stars for that alien life.